The grand court of the Varan Empire was not built for silence. Yet that morning it felt like the whole galaxy had stopped breathing. The black marble floor reflected the dim light of the twin suns that hung outside the golden windows. Every corner of the hall glowed faintly from the crystals that lined its towering pillars. But even their light seemed to fade in fear. Upon the great throne of obsidian and silver sat Empress Lyra, ruler of the Varan Empire for nearly 3 centuries. Her once radiant skin, a faint shade of shimmering pearl, now looked pale and fragile. The golden glow in her eyes, symbols of divine lineage among her people, had dulled to a weak gray. Her fingers trembled on the armrest, clutching it like someone holding on to the last thread of life. Around her stood dozens of alien advisors, creatures of power and elegance, each from a different star within her empire. Some had wings that glimmered like glass, others had translucent skin with veins of blue energy. They whispered in panic, their voices echoing through the vast chamber. "She is poisoned," one hissed, its silver tongue flicking in fear. "No, no," another cried, its scales turning black in distress. "It must be the curse of the ancient gods." "Silence," shouted the High Advisor, a tall, robed creature with 6 eyes. "We must not speak of curses in her presence. Find the healer priests, summon the psionics, prepare the chamber of renewal." Their panic rose like a storm, each voice louder, sharper, desperate. Yet through all of it one figure stood still. A man in armor, silent and steady near the foot of the throne. A human. His name was Daniel, a soldier from Earth. The humans had joined the Varan Empire only a few decades ago after a long and bitter war that ended in uneasy peace. Many Varans still saw humans as primitive, emotional, and reckless, but Empress Lyra had been different. She had once said to her court, "They burn brighter because they live shorter. There is something in them we have forgotten." That was how Daniel, a man with no noble blood or psionic gift, had been chosen to serve as her personal guard. Now, standing in that trembling hall, Daniel watched the Empress with quiet eyes. He had seen many things in his life, battlefields filled with fire, men dying in his arms, worlds burning, but never had he seen a being like her. Even now, weakened and pale, she held an aura of something deeper than royalty, something almost human. The advisors moved closer, their fear filling the air like smoke. One knelt and placed a crystal device against her hand. It beeped, glowing faintly red. "Her life energy is falling fast," the healer gasped. "She cannot survive the cycle." Lyra opened her eyes weakly. "Enough," she whispered. Her voice was soft but carried through the hall like wind through glass. "Stop," shouting. Instantly the room fell silent. Her gaze moved across her court, tired yet still commanding. "Fear will not help me. You all speak of cures, of power, of gods, but none of you see." The advisors exchanged worried looks. None dared to reply. Daniel, however, felt something stir in his chest. There was something in her voice, something that felt less like weakness and more like acceptance. The Empress looked at him suddenly, her gray eyes meeting his brown ones. It felt as if she had known he was watching her all along. "Human," she said softly. "Tell me, and what do you see?" The room froze. A human being addressed directly in the royal court? The advisors looked horrified. Some even whispered protests. But Daniel didn't look at them. His gaze stayed fixed on her. He hesitated for a moment. His training told him to stay silent, but something deeper told him to answer truthfully. "I see someone tired," he said slowly, "not just in body, but in spirit. You look like someone who's been fighting too long." A faint, almost invisible smile touched her lips. "Yes," she whispered. "Too long." The advisors erupted in disapproval. "Blasphemy! The human does not understand our Empress," shouted one with feathery hair. "He insults her by implying weakness." But Lyra raised her hand slightly and silence fell again. "Leave us," she commanded softly. They froze. "Your Majesty, we must—" "Leave," she repeated, stronger this time. Reluctantly they obeyed, bowing and murmuring among themselves as they retreated from the throne room. Only Daniel remained, unsure if he should also go. Lyra's gaze softened. "Stay," she said. He took a few careful steps closer, keeping his distance. The silence between them was heavy but not uncomfortable. Finally she spoke. "They fear what they do not understand." "I am not sick, Daniel, at least not in the way they think," he frowned. "Then what's happening to you?" She looked past him, toward the tall glass window where 2 suns shone. "Something old is waking in me," she said quietly. Something that has been sleeping inside my kind for thousands of years. Daniel didn't know what to say. The Varen were mysterious beings. Some said they were near immortal, their lifespans lasting centuries. But immortality always came with a price. Lyra continued, her voice low and distant. For too long I have ruled by reason, by control, by the perfection expected of me. But something within me, something forgotten, is changing. She looked at him again. And they cannot see it. They only see danger, but you see the truth? Daniel's throat tightened. He didn't understand everything she meant, but he could feel the emotion behind her words, the loneliness, the exhaustion, the deep ache of someone who had carried a crown for far too long. He took a slow breath. Then tell me how I can help, she smiled weakly. Just stay. That will be enough. Outside, the light of the suns began to fade into dusk, casting long shadows across the hall. The silence returned, not heavy this time, but gentle, almost peaceful. For the first time in years, the Empress of the Varen Empire closed her eyes, not in pain, but in quiet relief, and the human guard stood watch, silent and loyal, realizing that in that vast palace of power and fear, he might be the only one who truly saw her, not as a goddess, not as a ruler, but as a person slowly becoming something more. That night, Daniel didn't sleep. He stayed by the throne, listening to the distant hum of the palace and to the faint, fragile rhythm of her breathing. He didn't know what was happening. He didn't know what she meant by change, but in his heart, he knew one thing. This was not the end. It was the beginning of something far greater. The next few days turned the palace into a place of quiet fear. The once graceful corridors filled with the songs of crystal fountains and the soft hum of light now echoed only with hurried footsteps and hushed voices. The Empress's condition had worsened, and her people could not understand why. Lyra no longer attended her councils. The great throne of the Varen Empire stood empty, guarded by soldiers and surrounded by anxious advisors who spoke in low, trembling tones. They said she had been poisoned. Others whispered of forbidden magic, but no one dared to say what they all feared most, that the Empress's long life might finally be reaching its end. Inside her private chamber, the air shimmered faintly. Strange symbols glowed on the walls, ancient signs of protection drawn by the healer priests. A soft light pulsed around the bed where Empress Lyra lay, her body thin and weak, her breath shallow. Daniel stood at his post near the door. His armor was plain, but his presence carried weight. For hours he said nothing. He only watched her, listened to the sound of her faint breathing, and waited. When the healers came, he moved aside. They floated in with their long robes trailing like smoke. Their hands glowed as they performed their rituals, speaking in their melodic alien tongue. Gold liquid was poured into her lips. Psionic waves passed through her body, but nothing worked. After a while, one of them sighed and turned away. Her life energy is unstable, the healer said to the others. The body rejects every restoration. It's as if she does not wish to remain. Daniel's brow tightened. What do you mean? He asked quietly. The healer looked at him, almost annoyed. You would not understand, human. The Empress's essence is vast. If it rejects the body, there is nothing we can do. She may transcend or perish. It is not for mortals to know. They left soon after, their faces pale, their hands trembling. The door closed and silence filled the chamber again. Daniel moved closer to the bed. The Empress's face looked peaceful despite the sickness. Her skin glowed faintly like moonlight over water. Her lips moved weakly. Daniel. He knelt beside her. I'm here, Your Majesty. Her eyes fluttered open. They no longer held the golden shine of the Varen bloodline. Instead, they shimmered with silver light. Soft, unearthly, alive. They do not understand, she whispered. He frowned. Then help me understand. What's happening to you? Lyra's voice was faint, like a wind slipping through broken glass. For many ages, we stretched our lives with the power of stars. We became beings of mind, not heart. But every gift has a cost, Daniel. We lost something. Something small, something precious. What did you lose? He asked softly. Her gaze turned distant. The ability to change. To live with time, not against it. We made ourselves eternal, but in doing so, we killed our evolution. We stopped growing. He stayed silent, his chest tightening as he listened. When I met humans, she continued, I saw something in your kind that I had never seen in centuries. You live short lives, yet you live them fully. You feel deeply, you burn brightly, and even in pain you keep moving forward. When I watched you, something inside me remembered what it was to live. Her breathing weakened for a moment. Daniel reached out and held her hand gently, afraid it might fade if he let go. Her hand was cold, almost weightless. So this isn't sickness? He asked quietly. She shook her head weakly. No, this is... Awakening. Daniel's heart pounded. Awakening into what? I do not know, she said, a small tired smile touching her lips. Something new. Something ancient. But they will not understand. To them change is danger. Her fingers squeezed his hand faintly, almost pleading. Promise me you will stay. I promise, he said without hesitation. Her eyelids lowered again. Good, I am not afraid anymore. The room grew still. Only the sound of her breathing remained, shallow and slow. For a long time, Daniel sat beside her, his mind heavy. He thought of all the soldiers he had lost in war, all the faces that had faded with time. He had learned to accept death, but this felt different. It wasn't death he saw before him, it was transformation. He looked around the chamber. The strange light on the wall seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. The air shimmered faintly as if reality itself was bending around her. Suddenly the door burst open. The High Advisor stormed in, flanked by guards. His 6 eyes were wide with panic. Step away from her, human, he commanded. We must stabilize her immediately. Daniel stood but didn't move aside. She asked to rest. You'll only make it worse, the advisor hissed. You have no authority here. He waved his hands and the guards raised their weapons. The air crackled with psionic energy. Before Daniel could respond, Lyra's voice filled the room, soft yet powerful. Stop. The guards froze. The High Advisor fell to one knee instinctively. Your Majesty, forgive us. Lyra opened her eyes, and for a brief moment the entire room was flooded with silver light. You cannot stop what has begun, she said. Leave me, before you destroy what little remains. Her words carried a strange energy, like the pull of gravity. The guards lowered their weapons without question. Even the High Advisor seemed terrified. He backed away slowly, his hands trembling. As they left the room, the heavy doors sealed shut again. The silver glow faded. Daniel exhaled slowly and knelt beside her once more. You scared them, he said softly. Lyra gave a weak smile. Fear is easy to awaken in those who have forgotten wonder. He almost laughed, but his throat felt tight. You're still you, he said quietly. That's all that matters. Her fingers brushed against his hand again. For now, she whispered. Outside, thunder rolled across the alien sky. The twin suns dimmed, hidden behind swirling storm clouds. The light in the chamber flickered like candle flames caught in the wind. Daniel sat there through the night, guarding her as he had promised. Each hour, her glow grew brighter, her body lighter, as if the physical world was slowly losing its hold on her. And though fear crept into his heart, Daniel didn't move. He couldn't. Something told him that if he left her side even for a moment, she would slip away entirely. By morning, the Empress of the Varan Empire no longer looked ill. She looked peaceful. Her eyes were closed, her breathing slow and steady. The fever had passed, but her skin shone faintly and the air around her hummed like distant music. Daniel didn't understand it. He only knew one thing, whatever was happening to her. It was not an ending. It was the beginning of something the universe had long forgotten, and he would be there to see it through. The morning after the strange light had filled the Empress's chamber, the palace erupted into chaos. Word spread faster than fire in dry grass. Every corridor, every balcony, every whisper carried the same message. The Empress is dying, or worse. The advisors gathered in the Grand Council room, their voices clashing like waves in a storm. The circular table of crystal and gold glowed faintly with energy, reacting to their agitation. Some stood shouting over one another while others sat in trembling silence. The air was thick with fear. The healers report her life energy is unstable, said the High Advisor, slamming one hand against the table. If this continues, the psionic network of the Empire could collapse. Her essence is tied to our worlds. A feathered advisor flapped her wings anxiously. Then we must act. Seal her in the chamber of purity before her energy tears through the link? No, another interrupted, its translucent form flickering with stress. The chamber could destroy her mind completely. We must transfer her consciousness into the crystal core. It's the only way to preserve her knowledge. Preserve her? Hissed one with scaled skin. You mean trap her? The Empress is still alive? The arguments grew louder and sharper. The table lights flickered as psionic energy flared from their bodies, and through it all, Daniel stood quietly in the corner. His arms were crossed, his expression calm but tense. He had been summoned to the meeting only because he was her assigned protector, but no one in the room truly wanted him there. The High Advisor turned toward him suddenly, his 6 eyes glowing. Human soldier, he said with disdain. You were the last one to see Her Majesty last night. Speak, what did you witness? Daniel took a slow breath. I saw her in peace, he said simply. She wasn't in pain. Her fever's gone. She looks stronger now than before. Stronger? Several voices shouted at once. That's impossible, cried the healer priest. Her energy readings dropped below survival threshold. Daniel shrugged slightly. Then maybe your readings are wrong. The High Advisor's eyes narrowed. You dare question our science? I dare say what I saw, Daniel replied evenly. You all look at her like she's a broken machine to fix. But she's not broken. Something's happening to her, yes, but not sickness. It's change. Silence fell for a heartbeat. Then laughter broke out, sharp, cruel, alien laughter that echoed around the crystal walls. A human speaking of change? One sneered. Your kind burns out in decades. What do you know of transformation? Daniel didn't flinch. He looked around at them, his voice calm but heavy. Maybe that's exactly why I understand it better than you. Humans change every day, we have to. We don't live long enough to stay the same forever. His words silenced them for a moment. The High Advisor looked furious but unsure. We will not risk the Empire's stability over your primitive emotions, he snapped. Guards, restrict the human to his quarters. He is too close to the Empress, his judgment is compromised. Before Daniel could respond, the door opened, and the light changed. A soft glow spread through the room. Silver and white, calm and alive. It wasn't harsh like the lamps or the crystals. It was warm. It moved like breathing. The advisors froze, their eyes wide. The glow came from the corridor outside, where the Empress was slowly walking toward them. She was barefoot, wearing only a thin silver robe. Her long hair flowed like starlight, and her eyes were no longer gold. They were silver white, shimmering like the surface of a calm lake. Every step she took made the air hum softly. The advisors fell to their knees, trembling. Your Majesty. You must rest. Your energy field. Enough, she said gently, and the sound of her voice was like music. They stopped speaking immediately. Daniel stared, his heart pounding. She looked alive, more alive than ever before. Her skin glowed faintly. Her movements were light, graceful, and serene. Yet there was something different about her presence. It wasn't just strength, it was peace. The Empress stepped closer to the table. You all speak of fear, she said softly. Fear of loss, fear of change, fear of me. Her gaze moved across the room. But you have forgotten what it means to feel, to trust, to live. The High Advisor trembled. Your Majesty, we only wish to protect you. Your transformation could destabilize. Protect? She interrupted. Or control? Her words struck him like a blade. He stammered, unable to answer. Lyra turned her gaze toward Daniel. Her expression softened. You stayed, she said quietly. He nodded. I promised I would. Something like warmth passed between them, something silent and real. The advisors shifted uneasily. One finally broke the silence. Your Majesty, you are no longer Varen. Your energy signature has changed. You could be dangerous to yourself and to us. Lyra looked at her hands. They glowed faintly, silver light pulsing under the skin. She raised one hand and held it up. The air around it shimmered with power, but it was calm, not destructive. Does this look like danger to you? No one answered. She lowered her hand and sighed softly. You see only power or threat. But this, she touched her chest lightly. This is neither. It's awakening. Her words were soft, but they filled the entire chamber. Daniel felt something stir deep inside him. He didn't understand her fully, but he knew she wasn't lying. Whatever this transformation was, it wasn't evil, it was natural. The High Advisor bowed his head low, his voice trembling. Then what are you becoming, my Empress? She looked at him, her silver eyes calm and bright. Something the Varen were meant to be. something your fear has long buried. For a long moment, no one dared speak. Then Lyra turned to Daniel again. "Walk with me," she said gently. The advisors looked horrified, but Daniel obeyed. As he followed her out of the council chamber, whispers broke out behind them, fearful, angry, desperate. "She's losing control. She's not our Empress anymore. The human has corrupted her mind." But Daniel didn't look back. They walked together through the vast corridors, the sound of their footsteps echoing softly. The light followed her wherever she went, like the palace itself recognized her as something more than just its ruler. Finally, they stopped near the balcony that overlooked the twin suns. The view was breathtaking, the horizon painted with red and gold fire, the wind carrying the scent of alien blossoms. Lyra rested her hand on the railing. "Do you know what they fear most, Daniel?" she asked quietly. He looked at her. "Losing control?" She smiled faintly. "No, losing certainty. They have forgotten how to trust the unknown." He hesitated. "And you? Are you afraid?" For a long moment she didn't answer. Then she turned to him, her eyes glowing softly. "I was. But now I remember something you once told me." Daniel frowned. "What was that?" "That sometimes," she said, smiling gently, "you have to stop fighting the storm and learn to stand in the rain." Her voice was calm, but the emotion behind it made his chest tighten. He didn't even remember saying it, but it sounded like something he would. The sun dipped lower, casting light across her face. She looked both alien and human, fragile and eternal, and in that moment Daniel realized the truth. The Empress wasn't dying, and she wasn't becoming a monster. She was becoming something new, something the universe hadn't seen in 1,000 years, but the others wouldn't understand. They would fear it. They would fight it. And when they did, Daniel knew he would be standing between them and her. Because now, it wasn't just duty. It was something deeper. Something human. The night fell heavy over the Varen palace. The twin suns disappeared behind a sea of silver clouds, and for the first time in many years, the great city beneath the palace stood quiet. The towers that usually glowed with power dimmed one by one, until only the high spires of the royal citadel remained lit, glowing faintly like distant candles in the mist. Inside her chamber, Empress Lyra sat beside the tall glass window, looking out into the dark horizon. Her silver eyes reflected the faint lightning dancing across the clouds. She seemed calm, almost too calm, like a woman waiting for something she already knew was coming. Daniel stood a few steps behind her. His armor caught the reflection of her light, though he had removed his helmet. His face was tired but steady. He had not left her side for days. She broke the silence first. "You have not slept," he smiled faintly. "Neither have you." Her lips curved in the smallest hint of amusement. "True." She turned back toward the window. "They are afraid of me now, Daniel. I can hear it in their hearts. I can feel it even through the walls. Fear spreads fast in the dark. They don't understand," he said softly. "You told them the truth. You told them it's not sickness, it's change. But they only hear what they want to hear." Lyra nodded slowly. "The Varen were once beings of light. We lived with nature, with the stars, not above them. But as centuries passed, we built walls of perfection around ourselves. We forgot how to bend. We forgot how to feel. Now the universe calls me back to what we once were, and they call it sickness." Her voice was calm, but Daniel could feel the ache beneath her words. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. She looked at him over her shoulder, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dark. "No, but I do regret leaving them afraid." Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Then let me tell you something. Fear can't be erased by power. It disappears when someone stays beside you long enough to prove it wrong. You're not alone in this." Her eyes softened. "You still believe in loyalty?" "I do," he said. "Even when everyone else runs." A soft smile crossed her lips. "Humans, so fragile yet so brave." He shrugged lightly. "Maybe being fragile is what makes us brave." For a moment, silence returned. The only sound was the wind brushing against the palace walls and the soft pulse of light around her. Then suddenly the ground trembled slightly beneath their feet. The crystals embedded in the walls flickered. Daniel looked up. "What's happening?" Lyra's eyes turned distant. "It begins." Before he could ask, her body started to glow. Slowly at first, like moonlight waking from a dream. Then brighter and brighter until her whole form was surrounded by a halo of silver energy. The air shimmered around her, bending like heat waves. Daniel stepped forward. "Lyra?" She stood, her robe fluttering even though there was no wind. The glow grew stronger, illuminating every corner of the room. Her skin was transparent now. Inside, rivers of light flowed through her veins instead of blood. Outside the door, voices shouted in alarm. The guards and advisors had felt the energy spike. Within moments, the heavy doors burst open, and the High Advisor stormed in with several others. "What have you done, human?" he shouted. "You let her energy spiral out of control." Daniel raised his weapon not to attack but to keep them back. "She's not in danger. Don't come any closer. She's destabilizing reality," the advisor screamed. "If her energy reaches critical point, she could erase this entire sector." The room shook again. The light around the Empress expanded, licking the walls, making the marble melt and shimmer like water. But Daniel didn't move. He stood between them and her, his boots steady on the trembling floor. "She's not dying," he shouted over the roar. "Look at her face." The advisors hesitated. Lyra stood in the center of the storm, her eyes closed, her expression peaceful. Her arms were outstretched as if she was feeling something vast and beautiful beyond the reach of sight. The glow wrapped around her gently, not with violence, but with calm purpose. "Please," Daniel said quietly, lowering his voice. "Just look at her. Does she look like someone in pain?" None of them could answer. Then she opened her eyes. Silver light poured from them like rivers of starlight. The advisors fell to their knees, shielding their faces. The energy in the air grew so strong that even the crystal walls began to hum in resonance. Her voice filled the chamber, not loud, but vast, echoing through every heart. "Do not fear. I am not leaving you. I am returning." "Returning?" one of the advisors cried, trembling. "To what?" "To what we were," she whispered. "To life itself." Her glow grew brighter, swallowing the room in silver and white. Daniel shielded his eyes, but he didn't step back. He could feel warmth, gentle, pure, comforting, spreading through his body, filling him with something that wasn't pain but awe. For a moment, he wasn't in the palace anymore. He was standing in endless light, feeling the heartbeat of the universe itself. He heard her voice again, soft as breath. "Do not fear me, Daniel. You saw before any of them what I truly was." He tried to speak, but his words vanished into the radiance. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the light exploded outward in a blinding wave. The entire palace shook. The towers outside flared like torches in the storm. The energy shot into the sky, piercing the clouds, spreading across the heavens like threads of silver lightning. And then, silence. When Daniel opened his eyes, the room was still. The air smelled like rain. The walls were cracked but standing. The advisors lay on the floor, trembling and stunned. But the Empress was gone. Only a faint shimmer of silver dust remained in the air where she had stood, slowly drifting toward the window and out into the night. Daniel lowered his weapon and walked forward. His chest ached, his heart heavy, yet his hands didn't tremble. He touched the place where she had been. The air was warm, alive. He whispered, "You said you weren't leaving." The High Advisor staggered to his feet, his eyes wild. "You fool. You let her destroy herself." Daniel turned, his voice steady. "No, she didn't destroy anything." He looked out the window where the clouds were parting, revealing the stars above. She became something greater. Far above, a new light burned in the sky, a silver star brighter than all the rest, and as the others stared in shock and confusion, Daniel smiled faintly. "She's still here," he whispered. "She's just not trapped anymore." The advisors stood in silence, unable to argue. For the first time in centuries, none of them had words to explain what they had seen. But Daniel didn't need explanations. He had seen it in her eyes long before anyone else. This was not death. It was the birth of something divine. And though the Empire trembled with fear that night, one human soldier stood at peace watching the silver star rise in the dark sky, knowing that his Empress had finally found her freedom. The next morning, the palace stood silent under a sky that had changed forever, where the twin suns rose each day. A new silver star shone above them, soft, gentle, and endless. It pulsed like a heartbeat, a rhythm that could be felt even in the air. The people of Varan City looked up in awe, whispering prayers, their fear melting into wonder. But inside the palace, Fear still ruled. The High Council gathered in the Hall of Truth, their robes torn and their faces pale from the night's chaos. They spoke in hurried voices, blaming one another, searching for someone to carry the guilt. The Empress was gone, her body vanished, her light now a star in the sky. And though her final words had been peaceful, the advisors twisted them into something else. She has transcended, one said. She has perished, another countered. It was the human, the High Advisor shouted, slamming his hand on the table. He corrupted her. He filled her head with foolish human ideas, love, loyalty, compassion.
He made her weak.
The others murmured in agreement. It was easier to blame one man than to face the truth they couldn't understand. And so, before the suns reached their peak, Daniel was brought in chains to the council chamber. His armor was dented, his eyes hollow, but there was no fear in his face. He walked between the guards calmly, like a man walking into a familiar storm. The High Advisor pointed at him. Tell us, human, what did you do to her? Daniel looked up at the giant circle of alien faces. His voice was steady but filled with quiet sorrow. I did nothing to her. She changed because she was meant to. You were too blind to see it. Silence, the advisor barked. She was our Empress, our symbol of perfection. And you let her body disintegrate into dust. Daniel's eyes flashed. Her body didn't die. You all saw it. She became light. You watched her rise. You felt her warmth. You know it wasn't destruction. It was rebirth. The council chamber erupted in shouts. Some demanded his execution. Others argued for exile. None dared to believe him. As the noise filled the hall, Daniel lifted his head toward the ceiling. Through the skylight, he could see the silver star shining down, brighter than ever. For a moment, he swore it flickered in rhythm with his heart. He whispered softly, I know you're still here. The High Advisor noticed. You speak to the sky now? Foolish creature. But Daniel smiled faintly. No, I speak to her. That quiet confidence made the advisor tremble with anger. Take him to the dungeon, he ordered. Let him rot there until the truth returns to reason. The guards grabbed Daniel by the arms, but he didn't resist. He let them drag him away, his eyes never leaving that star above. In the cold stone prison beneath the palace, time lost meaning. Days bled into nights, and Daniel was left alone with his thoughts. The air was damp, the light dim, but every evening a silver glow crept through the small window high above his cell. He would sit there and talk to it. Lyra, he would whisper, they don't understand what you did. They're afraid. But I'll wait. You said you weren't leaving, and I believe you. Sometimes, when he spoke, the light would flicker softly as if answering. It was faint, but enough to keep his hope alive. And hope was a dangerous thing in that cold place. One night, as he drifted between sleep and wakefulness, a strange sound filled the cell. Not footsteps, not chains. A soft hum like a heartbeat echoing through stone. He opened his eyes and his breath caught. The light from the small window wasn't still anymore. It moved, swirling gently, forming shapes in the air. Slowly it gathered before him until it took the faint outline of a woman. Graceful, tall, and radiant. Lyra, he breathed. Her form shimmered like mist and moonlight. Her voice was soft and distant like wind across water. Daniel, he rose to his feet, his heart pounding. You came back. I never left, she said, her tone filled with warmth. You kept believing. That's why I can speak to you. He stepped closer, though she seemed more light than substance. They said you were gone, she smiled sadly. To them, yes, because they only see with eyes. But you see with something greater. You saw what was happening before anyone else. He felt tears burn his eyes. I saw you becoming something beautiful. I just didn't know if I'd ever see you again. She moved closer, her light touching his hands, warm like sunlight through glass. I am everywhere now, Daniel. In every breath of wind, in every ray of light, my people needed to be reminded that life changes, that even light must evolve, but they can't hear me yet. They are trapped in fear. Then let me help them, he said quickly. Tell me what to do. Lyra's glow dimmed slightly. There will be chaos soon. My star's energy is awakening things long dormant. They will think it's a curse. You must show them it's a gift, he frowned. How can I? They won't even listen to me. Her eyes softened. Because you are human, Daniel. You carry what they lost, faith without proof, love without condition. They will see it in you even if they don't understand it. The glow around her began to fade, her form becoming transparent. No, Daniel said, reaching out. Don't go yet, her voice grew fainter. I will always be near. When you look at the light, you will find me there. The last words lingered as she vanished completely, leaving only a faint shimmer in the air. Daniel stood motionless for a long time, staring at the space where she had been. His heart felt both full and broken at once, but something inside him had changed. He no longer felt trapped. When the guards came the next morning, they found him standing tall, his chains broken. They stared at him in shock, unsure how he had done it. The steel links lay on the floor, melted like wax. He simply looked at them and said, "I'm leaving." The guards didn't move. For the first time, fear and awe mixed in their eyes. His presence carried something otherworldly, something touched by her light. He walked out of the cell, each step echoing with quiet power. The star above glowed brighter with every step he took. When he reached the courtyard, hundreds of people had gathered, staring at him in silence. Their eyes reflected the silver light that now poured down from the sky. He looked up and whispered, "You're still guiding me, aren't you?" A warm breeze passed through the courtyard, brushing against every face, every heart. And in that moment, everyone felt it, her presence. Not gone, not dead, watching. Daniel smiled faintly. "Then let's finish what you started." The crowd didn't know what those words meant yet. But deep down, they felt something awaken, a memory of kindness, of light, of the Empress who had become a star. And at the center of it all stood one human soldier, bathed in her light, ready to remind an entire empire what it truly meant to be alive. The morning sun rose behind the silver star, casting a soft glow over the palace and the city below. The people of Varen had never seen such light. It shimmered on every rooftop, reflected on the water canals, and made the entire capital look alive again. But beneath that beauty, fear still whispered in the dark corners of the empire. Rumors spread faster than the dawn. Some said the Empress had ascended into divinity. Others whispered she had been destroyed by human corruption, and in the heart of it all stood Daniel, the lone human soldier who dared to believe in her truth. The council had lost control. The streets filled with citizens demanding answers, praying to the star above. Priests declared it a miracle, while scientists called it an anomaly. But Daniel knew better. He could still feel her presence whenever the wind touched his face. That morning he stood at the steps of the royal courtyard, facing a crowd of thousands. His armor gleamed faintly in the silver light, and though he looked weary, his voice was calm when he spoke. "You all saw what happened," he began. "You saw her rise into light. She didn't vanish. She changed. She became part of everything." The crowd murmured. Some listened, some turned away. Many were afraid. An old Varen elder stepped forward, her eyes dim with doubt. "You speak as if she chose this. But what if she was taken from us?" Daniel shook his head gently. "She wasn't taken. She was freed. You've worshipped perfection so long that you forgot what it means to grow. She showed you that even perfection must change." A younger alien shouted, "Why should we believe a human? You are not one of us." Daniel's expression softened. "Because she believed in me when no one else did, and because she wanted you to believe in yourselves the same way." The words hung heavy in the air. They were simple, but they struck deep. Then, above them, the silver star pulsed once, bright and warm as if approving his words. The people gasped. A breeze swept through the courtyard, carrying a faint scent of rain and light. The younger alien who had shouted before fell silent, his anger fading into awe. From the palace balcony, the High Advisor watched with burning eyes. His plans to turn the crowd against Daniel were failing. The people were listening to the human. They were beginning to hope again. That to him was dangerous. He turned to the guards beside him. "Bring the human to me, now." By midday, Daniel was standing in the grand hall again, though this time without chains. The High Advisor faced him across the long table, his sharp silver eyes filled with resentment. "You're turning my people against their own faith," the advisor hissed. "I'm giving them the truth," Daniel said calmly. "You're the one hiding it." The advisor slammed his fist on the table. "The Empress was our divine ruler. You dare twist her death into some human fairy tale?" Daniel didn't flinch. "If you truly believe she's dead, then why does her light still burn in your sky?" The room fell silent. The other council members looked uneasy. None of them could answer that question. The advisor leaned closer, his voice low and venomous. "Do you know what I see when I look at you, human? A virus. You infect everything with your chaos, your emotions, your weakness, your hope. You made her believe she could be something more than a ruler. Daniel's jaw tightened. She was always more. You just refused to see it. The advisor's eyes flashed. Enough, guards! 2 armored soldiers entered, weapons drawn. Daniel didn't move. He looked at them, then at the advisor. You're afraid. Not of me, but of what comes next. Afraid? The advisor spat. Your Empress is gone, and soon her memory will fade too. At that very moment, the hall trembled. A low hum filled the air, the same hum Daniel had heard the night. Lyra transformed. The light pouring through the windows brightened suddenly, turning silver and alive. Everyone froze. Daniel took a step toward the center of the hall. The floor beneath his boots began to glow faintly, symbols of light forming beneath him. The advisor stumbled backward in panic. From above, a soft voice echoed through the hall, a voice no one could mistake. My people. Every head turned upward. The ceiling of the grand hall shimmered, and for an instant a massive image appeared, an ethereal vision of Empress Lyra, her form woven from starlight. Her expression was calm, her presence warm. Gasps filled the chamber. Some fell to their knees. The advisor trembled, unable to look away. Do not let fear guide you, her voice continued. Change is not death, it is life. The universe itself grows through change. I gave you my light so you could remember what it feels like to be alive again. Her gaze shifted to Daniel and her tone softened. And you, Daniel? You kept faith when no one else did. Daniel's throat tightened, his eyes glistening. I only did what you taught me. Lyra smiled faintly. Then teach them what I can no longer say. Her image began to fade, but before disappearing, her last words filled every heart in the hall. You are not my subjects anymore. You are my children. Live free. Then the vision vanished and the hall was silent. Daniel stood there for a long moment, tears glinting on his face. He wasn't ashamed of them. Around him, the advisors whispered in disbelief. The guards lowered their weapons, trembling. The high advisor fell to his knees, his pride cracking like glass. She spoke, he whispered. She truly spoke. Daniel looked at him and said quietly, Now do you still think she's dead? The advisor didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the floor, broken by the truth. That evening, the news spread across the empire. The Empress had spoken again, through the light, through the human who had never stopped believing. Cities that had fallen silent for months now lit up with celebration. The people sang songs under the star, calling it the heart of Lyra. Children pointed at the sky, smiling, unafraid. And Daniel? He stood at the edge of the palace balcony, watching it all. The silver star pulsed above him, casting soft light on his face. He closed his eyes, letting the breeze brush against him. It carried her warmth, her essence, her promise. You were right, Lyra, he whispered. They're learning to live again. For the first time since she had ascended, he felt peace, not because she was gone, but because she was everywhere. Behind him, the high advisor approached slowly. His pride was gone, replaced with quiet humility. You were right, he said softly. She wasn't destroyed. She became something we couldn't understand. Daniel turned, his gaze calm. Now you do, the advisor nodded slowly. Yes, and for what it's worth, I'm sorry. Daniel looked back at the star. Don't be sorry. Just remember. The night deepened. The silver light covered the land, and for the first time in generations, the Varan Empire felt alive again, and though only one human had stood against an empire, his belief had done what power could not. It had brought hope back to a dying world. The silver star had now become a part of every night. It shone brighter than any other, pulsing softly as if alive, as if breathing. For the people of Varan, it was no longer a mystery or a symbol of fear, it was hope. The Empress had not died. She had become their sky, and the one who reminded them of that truth was still among them. The human guard, Daniel. Weeks turned into months. The empire began to change in ways no one had imagined. The rigid laws that once ruled every aspect of life were replaced with kindness, with freedom. The palace that once echoed with pride and cold authority now opened its gates to the people. The high advisor, now humble and quiet, often sought Daniel's guidance. It was strange for the proud alien to seek wisdom from a human, but he no longer cared for pride. She chose you for a reason, he once said softly. I see that now. Daniel never claimed to be special. He always replied with the same words, "She chose everyone." I was just the first to listen. Still, every night he found himself drawn to the highest balcony of the palace, where he could see her star clearly. He would stand there for hours, speaking softly into the wind as if she could still hear him. "Lyra," he would whisper, "I kept my promise. They're learning to love again. They're learning to change." Sometimes the star would flicker gently like a heartbeat. He liked to believe that was her way of answering. One evening, a storm rolled across the horizon. The skies turned dark, thunder rumbling in the distance. The silver light of the star cut through the clouds, but even it seemed dimmer than usual. The palace guards murmured nervously, wondering if this was an omen. Daniel stood on the balcony again, watching the storm approach. The wind whipped against his armor, carrying the taste of rain and electricity. He closed his eyes and listened. He felt something in the air, a whisper faint and distant like a memory calling his name. Daniel. His eyes flew open. The sound wasn't in his head, it was real. The silver star pulsed once, brighter than lightning. He stepped forward, his heart racing. "Lyra?" The voice came again, soft but clear. "You have done well. You kept faith when hope was fragile. You gave them what I could not." He looked up, the storm reflecting in his eyes. "I didn't do it alone. You were always here." A soft breeze brushed against his face, carrying warmth instead of rain. "Yes," she said gently. "But your heart was my voice." Daniel felt his throat tighten. "Then why do I feel like you're fading?" There was silence for a long moment. Then her voice returned, filled with quiet sadness. "Because my light must move beyond this world. It's time for me to guide others far from here. The universe is calling." He stepped closer to the railing, gripping it tightly. "No, you can't leave them. They still need you." "They have you now," she whispered. "And they have themselves." "That is enough," his voice trembled. "What about me?" For a moment there was only wind and rain. Then her voice returned, soft as a lullaby. "You were never mine to keep, Daniel. You were mine to remind." Lightning flashed across the horizon. The star shone brighter, fighting against the storm. He felt her presence all around him, not distant but close, so close he could almost touch her again. He whispered, "If you must go, take me with you." The light above shimmered gently. "No, your path is still here. You must help them build what comes next. Promise me that." He closed his eyes, fighting the ache in his chest. "I promise." The sky grew brighter, blindingly bright. The silver star pulsed 3 times, then released a wave of light that swept across the entire sky. The storm vanished, the thunder fell silent, and for a few seconds everything stood still. When the light faded, the star was still there, but smaller, softer, like a memory settling into peace. Daniel fell to his knees, the wind quiet around him. He didn't cry this time. The tears had already fallen long ago. He simply whispered, "Goodbye, Lyra." And from somewhere far beyond the stars, a faint voice replied, "Never goodbye. Always light." The next morning, the palace bells rang, not for mourning, but for renewal. The people gathered in the central square where a new symbol had been raised. A silver banner with a star woven into it, shining softly under the twin suns. It was called the Light of Change. The empire no longer had an empress. Instead, it had something better, freedom guided by the lessons she had left behind. Daniel walked through the crowd, no longer in armor, but in simple robes of white. Wherever he went, people bowed, not to worship him, but to thank him. Children would point to the star and ask, "Was she really real?" He would smile gently and answer, "She's as real as the light that touches your face." The high advisor approached him one day, carrying a small metal box. "This was hers," he said softly. Inside was a pendant, a small crystal that glowed faintly with silver light. She wore it the night she ascended. "I think it belongs to you now." Daniel held it in his hands, feeling its warmth. "No," he said after a long pause. "It belongs here." He placed the pendant on the altar beneath the star's reflection in the palace courtyard. The crystal pulsed once, then dimmed as if resting. The people who witnessed it said that for a moment they saw 2 figures in the light, one glowing with silver, the other standing beside her in shadow. They stood together, watching over the city. Years passed. The Empire of Varen became a place of peace. The people lived freely, blending science with spirit, power with compassion. And though the star grew dimmer with time, it never disappeared. It remained steady, a reminder of what faith and love could do. Daniel grew older, his hair turning silver, his steps slower, but his heart never lost its strength. Every night he would still climb the same balcony and look up at the sky. One evening, long after the city had fallen quiet, he stood there again. The wind was warm, carrying the scent of rain. He looked at the star and smiled. "You did it, Lyra," he whispered. "They became what you wanted them to be." The star flickered softly, and for the briefest second he thought he saw her face again. Radiant, peaceful, smiling. He closed his eyes, letting the light wash over him. "I'm coming home soon," he said softly. "Save a place for me among the stars." The wind stirred gently, almost like laughter, and the star brightened once more. When morning came, they found him still standing there, leaning on the railing, a calm smile on his face. The pendant on the altar glowed again for the first time in years, filling the courtyard with silver light.